Morning, students. We're now going to move on to 8.2, relative frequency. We're going to take what we learned about two-way frequency tables, and now we're going to start analyzing some data. So you're going to need your book again, and honestly, you're probably going to need a calculator, whether that be on your phone. It could be a really basic calculator. It doesn't have to be one we use in class. So in your book, we're going to be on page 359, talking about relative frequency. How can you recognize possible associations and trends between two categories of categorical data? Remember, categorical data is data that is not represented by numbers. So color, type of car, things like that. So relative frequencies. To show what portion of a data set each category in a frequency table makes up, you can convert the data to relative frequencies. The relative frequency of a category is the frequency of the category, so it's the frequency, how often it occurs, divided by the total of all frequencies. So this is a big key. You might want to star his. The relative frequency is the frequency divided by the total. So we have a frequency table here, somebody's favorite sport or a survey of favorite sports. 20 like basketball, 32 like football, 28 like soccer, for a total of 80 students. Well, the relative frequency of somebody who likes basketball is 20 divided by the total, which is 80. So 20 divided by 80 is 0.25. So it can be written as a decimal. It can also be written as a fraction. You'll see the fraction here. That fraction, if you want, reduces to 1 over 4. That's a good way to show it. But what you can also do with this decimal is move the decimal 2 spots to the right and get a percentage. So 0.25, move the decimal 2 spots, is 25%. Let's do another example so you can see how this works. Football, 32. Well, that's 32 over the total, which is 80. Now let's think of that as a fraction reduced. 32 over 80, I can divide both of those by 8, and I get 4 over 10, which I could reduce adding more. I could divide both of those by 2 and get 2/5. Now, what is that as a decimal? Well, as a decimal, that's 0.4. So I can write it as a fraction, I can write it as a decimal, but in this box it says to write it as a decimal, so that's why I came up with that. And now to write it as a percentage, I'm going to move that 2 spots to the right and get 40%. So go ahead and try and figure out these last 2 boxes on your own. What's the relative frequency for soccer, and what's the relative frequency for the total? Okay, for soccer, well, I'll just show you the answers. So soccer, we had 28, so 28 divided by 80. You could reduce the fraction, I'm not worried about that right now, is 0.35. Move the decimal 2 spots and you get 35%. And the total will always be 100%. So 80 divided by 80 is 1, where the decimal is right here. If I move the decimal 2 spots, 1 is the same as 100%. So to do relative frequencies, take the number divided by the total. Now there's 2 types of relative frequency. I'm going to go to the next page here. We're going to just go ahead and skip this reflect part for right now. The 2 types of relative frequency are called a joint relative frequency and a marginal relative frequency. The questions are going to lead you through these, so they're not too difficult. But in a joint relative frequency, you got to divide. Notice in both cases it's divide. But you can divide a frequency that is not a total by the grand total. So in a joint relative frequency, you divide a frequency not a total at all, either not in a total row or total column, and you divide it by the grand total. I'll show you how that works in a second. The marginal relative frequency is found by dividing a row total or a column total by the grand total. So in both cases you're dividing. In both cases you're dividing by a grand total. But in the first one, it's a middle number. That's the way I like to think of it, a middle number. And in a marginal, you're dividing with a total number. So let me show you what I mean. we have this survey. Kanisha recorded the gender and sport preferences of a bunch of students and got this table. Now, from this table, she got a bunch of relative frequencies. Notice that there were 6 girls that like basketball out of 80 total. So she went 6 divided by 80 is 0.075. This is your joint relative frequency because it's in the middle. So 0.75 is the same as 7.5%. They moved the decimal 2 spots to the right. And she did that over and over and over. Okay? These middle numbers, not in a total row, are your joint relative frequencies. Okay? The marginal relative frequencies are the same thing, they're just in the total rows. They take, okay, there were 20 kids total that like basketball, so 20 out of 80 is 0.25 or 25%. So while these are your joint ones, these ones here, as well as here, because they're in your totals, are your marginal relative frequencies. Okay, so I hope that's making sense. Again, just take the number, divide it by the total. So I'm looking at example B. It's on the next page. It's on page 361. And we have Millie here. She performed a survey of students in the lunch line and recorded which type of fruit each student selected, along with the gender of each student. The 2 variable frequency data she collected is shown in the table. And so she made this table right here from her survey. And now she figured out her frequencies. She took 16 divided by 92 and got 17.4%. She took 25 divided by 92 and got 27.2%. She took 41 divided by 92 and got 44.6%. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now is do the same thing for the rest of these 9 boxes. Take the number, divide it by this, and change it into a percent. Go ahead and try that right now. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. Here's what your table should look like. If you didn't get these percentages, go ahead and fix them. Okay. Now take these numbers and fill in the boxes down below. The joint relative frequencies, blank, are girls who selected an apple. So girl who selected an apple is 17.4%. It's just asking you to understand what each number means. 17.4% are the girls who selected an apple. What about the boys who selected an apple? Well, that's going to be boys who selected an apple is 27.2%. And yes, you need to put the percent symbol on. Okay? Notice it's in all those spots. Go ahead and fill in the rest of those boxes, and I'll show you the answers in a second. Okay? And when you fill in all those boxes, it should look like that. If you need to pause the video to correct your boxes, go ahead and do so. All right. Now on the next page, on page 362, there's a table right here. And honestly, you can do the joint and relative frequencies without filling out a whole new table like we did down here. Just take the number divided by the total. So let's see what number 4 says. Find the joint relative frequency of students who liked aerobics but dislike weightlifting. Okay, so they like aerobics, but they dislike weightlifting. Where are we in that box? So let's see. Like aerobics. Well, yes, they like aerobics, so we know we're in this column somewhere. But they don't like weightlifting. So looks like our intersection is number 12. So we have 12 over 40. And 12 out of 40, I'm just going to move this box here, is 0.3 or 30%. So I'm kind of giving you the answer here, but I want you to see how to do this. So 12 divided by 40 is 30%. Let's look at number 5 together. What is the marginal relative frequency of students surveyed who like weightlifting? Okay, well, how many students like weightlifting? Let me get rid of all my ink here because it's kind of in the way. Think to yourself, how many students in total like weightlifting? Well, that's 19. Out of how many total? Oh, who like weightlifting. I'm sorry, I went from aerobics. Oh, even Mr. Osborne makes mistakes. Likes weightlifting. Well, yes, they like weightlifting, so that's all the way over here at 21. And 21 divided by 40 is 0.525 or 52.5%. So that's how you're going to answer questions like that. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is conditional relative frequencies. A conditional relative frequency, I'm reading from this paragraph right here, describes what portion of a group with a given characteristic also has another characteristic. It's like, okay, I know that what I want to talk about are girls, so that's our given. When I know what we're talking about, it's going to use the word given. A conditional relative frequency is found, and I want you to underline this just like we underlined before. Before. It's found by dividing a frequency that is not in a total. We're going to divide that by the total for that row or column. Now, look at this. It is not the total for the whole thing. It's just for the total of that row or column. So it says use the data from example 1A, which is all the way back on page 360. Okay, so you're going to have to flip back and forth here a little bit. It says use the data from example 1A, find the conditional relative frequency that a person in Keisha's survey prefers soccer, please underline prefer soccer, given that the person is a girl. Okay, so we know we're only looking at the girls. Whatever it tells you is the given goes on bottom. Okay, so it says given the person is a girl. Well, how many girls do we have in total? If we look at that table, and maybe I'll go back all the way over here so that we can see it on the video. I gotta find it. Oh, I went too far. Oh, I never used that table. Okay. Oh, here it is, right here. So how many girls do we have in total? Well, we have 36 girls in total, and that's on page 360 if you need to look back at it. So, excuse me, it's on page 360, but the total was 36. Now, what goes on top is what we're looking for. We're looking for girls who what? Prefer soccer. So not only are we looking for girls, we're looking for girls that prefer soccer. So how many girls prefer soccer? When I look at that table, I go over to the girl row, and under soccer is 18. So 18 divided by 36 is 0.5 or 50%. Half of the girls in a sample prefer soccer. Now it says use the data from example 1B. Now keep in mind example 1B is a different table. That's the Millie problem. It's on page 361. It says find the conditional relative frequency that a student in Millie's survey chose an orange given that the student is a boy. My underline wasn't very good there. Let me try again. We know that our student is a boy. So this goes on the bottom. How many boys do we have? Well, let's take a look at this. I always like to start with the bottom when we're doing this. The total number of what's given to us is that the student is a boy. So the total number of boys, you probably need to fill that in, is going to be 52. That comes from the table. If you look on page 361, the number of total boys is 52. But on top, we're looking for the number of boys who chose an orange. So staying in that same row, the boys that chose an orange was 14. I divide 14 by 52 and get 0.269. Move that decimal 2 spots to get 26.9%. So that's how you do a conditional relative frequency, is look what is given, put that on the bottom. Given that a student is a boy, okay, I have 52 boys. But how many boys chose an orange is 14. 14 divided by the number of boys is that number, okay? So I'm going to help you do, because this is a little confusing for kids, so I'm going to help you do this. We're going to use the data from the Your Turn exercise 4 and 5. So if you look, that's the table that's on page 362. And I'm going to go back and forth here so that hopefully that makes sense. It says, what is the conditional relative frequency that a student likes to lift weights? Okay, so we're looking for a student that likes to lift weights. I like to underline what we're looking for. Given that the student does not like aerobics. So we know it's a student that doesn't like aerobics. We want the total number of students that don't like aerobics, and we're going to put that, think about where we're going to put it. We're going to put it on the top or the bottom. So how many students don't like aerobics? Let's go find that table. It's back here a ways. Did I go past it? Yes, I did. It's hard to find this when I go back and forth. All right. We're looking for students that don't like aerobics. How many students don't like aerobics? Well, there's 21 in total. Okay. So we know on the bottom it's 21. Again, that table's on 362 if that makes it easier for you. But out of those 21, how many like to lift weights? Well, out of those 21, 14 of them like to lift weights. Like weightlifting, yes, 14. So we got 14 out of 21. And when I divide 14 by 21, I get 0.667. Move that decimal 2 spots to get 66.7. This whole thing should be in your answer, okay? So I want you to try number 7 on your own. Let's see if you can do it. I'll help you a little bit. You want to find the conditional relative frequency that a student likes to lift weights, given that the student likes aerobics. So go and try that one on your own. All right, so let's see what we got. You should have come up with the fraction 7 over 21. 21 students in total like aerobics, but 7 of them like to lift weights. Now 7 divided by 21 is 33.3%, okay? So that's all you're going to do. I know this is a little harder than 8.1, but I also have confidence that you can do this. Hopefully you filled out all your notes. If you haven't, go ahead and go back through it. And you're going to need to have done this lesson for Thursday or Friday's activity. So good luck with that, and we'll see you tomorrow.